So thank you for coming. Me too. For those of you that weren't here yesterday, I'll just touch on a few things. So we of course want to thank our sponsors once again, as we would not be have the event without them. So Research One with University of South Florida, Fugro, Wilbert, Dewberry. We really appreciate the efforts, as well as St. Pete Innovation District, the Hub, Clearwater, St. Pete, and Saildrone. Thank you very much. We'll go over a few more logistics just for those that weren't here. The meeting's being recorded, and it will be available on the FCMaP Hub. And I will put a report together as well after the event. For those of you that are online, remember that you need to mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and you can have your camera on when you're presenting. Presenters will be able to share their own screen. Please go ahead and add anything to the chat, but you can also raise your hand, and when we call on you, we will go ahead and you can just speak for yourself. We have Amber Butler with NOAA taking care of the online part of that, so we appreciate that very much. And once again, the microphones in this area are really sensitive, so any little whispering conversations they can hear. So just keep that in mind. We'll have lunch and snacks or whatever out there, again, just in the little common area. Bathrooms are out this door. There's also a bottle filling station right out there as well if you need some water. There are also bathrooms downstairs and to your left. However, today, as you probably all noticed when you came in, today between 10 and 11, they're having a ribbon cutting event downstairs. And so it'll probably maybe trickle over into 11:30. They just asked that if we do have to go downstairs or we are out there, you know, coming down the steps or anything, to be respectful, to be quiet. Don't go charging down the steps, yelling on your cell phone. That's kind of what they said. So, and then if you need the internet, it's just the USF guest, and then you fill out the page on the browser. There's a little poster on the back wall there that explains if anybody has trouble. And just a quick overview of the agenda. We will start out the day with the best practices, data management, and sharing. All of our presentations, again, will be 20 minutes or roundabout, with 5 minutes for questions. So we'll have a break, and then we'll discuss filling in the gaps with crowdsourced bathymetry. We will then break for lunch, and this afternoon's discussion will be advancing engagement and data awareness to build a community of practice. And we will end with the Florida mapping updates. That'll be the lightning talks. I just found out that Nick will be able to, is this correct? Do you have slides you want to present at the end?
I just emailed those.
Okay, so we'll add those to the end. He was on the agenda, then he was off the agenda. He showed up today and said he's back on the agenda. So we'll just, unless someone wants to tell him they don't want to hear from him, just let me know and I'll tell him. So with that, unless there are questions about anything, I will go ahead and let Anna take the stage here. So there's a clicker or we know the clicker never like dark. So otherwise the arrows or down here. And yesterday, since I didn't think anybody wanted the clicker because it never works, but that's what has the pointer. So we have a pointer today. Sorry you didn't have one yesterday. There you go.
Thanks, everyone. My name is Anna Braswell. I'm from the University of Florida and Florida Sea Grant, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a project with the RESET program that I've been doing with Vince and Sherry here, my colleagues, that's trying to develop a standardized framework for benthic data integration and distribution on the West Florida shelf. Yep, not gonna work. So, no, it's okay. So just to start with, I think something that we probably all know about in this room are fair data principles, which is a principle to allow for open data to be more readily accessible and usable. There's four tenets of this fair data principles. First, that they're findable, which means that they have a persistent DOI. You can always go back and find them, not going to have a broken link. They're accessible, which means that you can have a meaningful interaction with that data set. It's not locked. It's not behind a paywall. You can get to it. They're interoperable. They don't have to go on a particular operating system or particular platform to be used, and they're reusable. And that means that they have full metadata. You have enough information to be able to use that data. It's not something where you're lacking, how the data was collected or the time it was collected. It has full metadata with it. And these are really key in open data being able to be taken by somebody else and processed and used for their own purposes. Why is this important? Well, I think whenever we look at a science journal these days, they have a big global map and lots of dots on it, which is often because people are able to take other people's data and use it. It's really important for synthesis in that respect, like how we can bring data together. It's important for generalization, how we can look at one study and then understand how it applies to other areas in comparison between two studies or two data sets and how they compare to each other. So really important for moving science forward. And I think the biggest thing, especially in the days and times that we live in right now, is data reuse. Everything that we do costs money usually, and oftentimes it's federal dollars. So how can we reuse a data set over and over again in order to get the best bang for the buck for it? This has been gaining traction across funders and journals, including NSF, NASA, and AGU, just to name a few. And I put their policies up here to show that they're increasingly wanting you to put your data in someplace open and available. But that doesn't always mean that it is reusable, because these policies often don't come with, it needs to have the following attributes in order for you to be considered open. So it's becoming more and more common, both from funders and journals. So to get back to our project, again, this is a RACEP project. So our goal was to establish a West Florida standardized mapping framework center of excellence. And this was basically to come together as a community and try to understand how we could aggregate benthic data, to benthic habitat data in particular, to have a place that you can go and find that data for the West Florida shelf. We had a couple of goals for this. The first was to review existing and successful other frameworks across the world to try to understand how people are doing this in other places, and if there's other examples that would be good to either go forward with or say, hey, we should all be using this. The second is to get community agreement on the structure of the framework and for data integration and distribution. And the third is to take what we've gotten from the community and try to build a set of tools that will help the community move forward within this framework to better create open data. So I'm going to start here with reviewing existing and successful frameworks about marine data integration. And I know quite a few of you have probably seen me present before, so I'm going to kind of go quickly through this because it's things that I've said to this group before. So just as a reminder of what we did. So we really looked at different portals, different places that people are putting marine data from anywhere from Europe to US, just to try to see what people were doing and what we might be able to contribute to the West Florida shelf. And we came up with a summary of kind of where things are. And as most of you guys know, things are everywhere, right? Like we have a lot of places that people are putting data. First of all, NOAA's NCEES is probably the best existing option, but it's at a national scale, and often you have to go through an extensive approval process in order to put data up there. So it's not most useful for people. In that case, it's only for those that have the right data set to go up there. The Gulf-wide, and I'm showing that the slide is dated because this should be the Gulf of America Alliance. Gulf-wide, the Gulf of America Alliance and the Gulf of America Open Data Platform is very promising, but they're not quite there as far as what they're trying to do with thematic maps for these marine data sets. Grid Seas is a great platform, but it's not free for all. It's often at a cost. So for instance, this is what the RACEP program uses, but for somebody who's just trying to alone go up there and put a data set up, there's not an option for that doesn't cost something. Statewide, there's the Florida Geographic Data Library, but this really acts more of a repository and not as an actual data portal. It's a little bit harder to visualize some of that data and to know what you're getting yourself into. And finally, Florida's Geospatial Open Data Portal that's maintained by Florida's Geographic Information Office is also an option, but it tends to be a last place to put things. Like they have pieces of data that can't go anywhere else. So as you can see, there are options out there, but there's not like one particular stop shop for this. The other thing that we found in looking through these things is that they're expensive. So if we were looking at the gold standard, which is looking to Europe from the way that they do it through ModNet, that platform costs anywhere from $5 to $12 million a year, and that is beyond the scope of this project. So I think the first thing that we realized going through this is that this project was not actually going to be able to build the framework, but we were going to be able to help people come together and kind of agreeing what the standards might be going forward. And that this is probably something for us to, as a community, continue to think about and to think about how to build it. So conclusions, many data repositories out there, no one-stop shop, and of course, creating a framework will take a lot of money. Okay, so I've taken you through our first goal and that we've reviewed the existing and successful frameworks and tried to understand where we are as a community. The second is getting community agreement on the structure of the framework for data integration. And this really took two things. The first was evaluating where we are as a community. How are people using data right now? What are their current practices around standardization? And the second was using experts to recommend standards and then getting community buy-in on those standards as we go forward. So I'm going to start here. And again, this is probably things that you guys have seen before, so I'm going to try to be quick through this. So we did a survey that I think many of you probably took of the community to try to understand what kinds of data people are using and how they're using it. First of all, just to say that we got a good distribution of different types of sectors, but mostly in local, state, and government. Those are the biggest group taking the survey. When we look across different disciplines, so biology, chemical and physical oceanography, geology, hydrography, imagery, and other data sets to try to understand what people were using, we can see that across these different industries that people are pretty much equally using those sorts of data sets, maybe just a little bit more in the hydrography for certain group. And then we asked, okay, how are you guys sharing your data? Is it on a fixed schedule? Is it upon request? Are you not typically sharing it? Or is it public data? Is it publicly available after collection? Or do you go through a QA/QC process? And the thing I really wanted to point out here is that 48% of people said that it was either upon request or not typically shared, showing that there really is this huge group of people still that are not sharing the data despite funding and journal restrictions on data sharing. So we do see that there is room for improvement on how many people are actually sharing their data. The other thing that we asked was, what is your limitation to sharing data? And of course, the first thing that comes up is time and staff limitations, which I can't do a lot about. That costs money. I can't fix your time and staff limitations. I wish I had more time and more staff. But when we go down and look at what some of the secondary ones were in limitations, we see there's variability in collection and methods and protocols. There's a lack of training and guidance and protocols. There's inconsistent formatting of geospatial data. There's missing or incomplete metadata. And this to me are all things that are an education problem, right? Or a training problem, or not having the right tool problem. So these are really things that we as a community could come together and try to start fixing if we had the ability to move towards agreement on standards and then educating people on how to. And then just the last thing that I wanted to share from this was we also asked, are you guys using a fixed metadata standard for your open data when you're making it available or transferring? And only 20% of people said yes. The other 80% said no, or I'm not sure, really showing that we don't have a lot of agreement on metadata standards. A lot of people don't even know if it's metadata standards. So there is a lot of open data out there that doesn't have the right information with it to be able to reuse. So even if you are putting things out there, some of these people probably just don't know that they're not giving enough information for somebody else to come and pick it up. So again, it points to this real big education problem with our community. All these results are in a paper that we just published in December. So it's out there for you guys to look at. It's in Oceans and Coastal Management. So if you guys want to check that out, it has all the results in it. Okay, the second thing that we did with this particular component of the project was getting expert teams together to come up with data standards in their particular discipline so that we could move forward with trying to get community agreement on how are we going to set some ideas of what the boundaries of data sharing are. So we put together teams of people across Florida and the different experts in the different disciplines to help us with this. And this really took form in a couple of different steps. The first is that we, again, put that team together and then we asked them to create recommendations on data standards. We then took those data standards and put them back out to the community through a survey asking for agreement or likelihood of use with the community. We've also written a technical report that supports those recommendations. So it's basically the background that all of those experts went through to get to their recommendations. So looking through the different sources, metadata standards to support that. And then finally, we're currently working on a paper of those findings, both putting those recommendations together and the stakeholder survey to kind of present back to the community of here's what we found. Our experts ranged in discipline from bathymetry and backscatter to geology and geomorphology, chemistry, biology, and then physics or oceanography. So we had 5 different groups, and they tended to put together their own authorship team on that. So we had little teams going for each expert discipline. And this was really a 2-year process of writing and working together on this. And it started out with an in-person meeting, and then we moved forward through like working days, all hands meetings, trying to get through the actual writing of it. But as one might expect, when you have experts, it's really hard to get people to move on some of this stuff. So that was a bit of a painful process of trying to like make sure that people continue to work on this going forward. We've published this standards report. It's on, I should have put the link up there, but it's on Zenodo. But it is now out there about all the information these experts collected and what conclusions they came through through looking at all that information. And I just wanted to pull an example standard. So this is an example of what our bathymetry and backscatter expert team came up with. I don't want you to look at the details because there's a lot of stuff up there, but just to kind of give you an idea. So each standard, regardless of discipline, looked at data collection, data processing, metadata, and data archiving and publication. And what you see here is that there are a lot of different things that went into this standard. It's not really any one particular group that people are relying on, depending on the different type of data that you're looking at, depending on what kind of processing you're doing. People are pulling from different institutions and different groups of people to come up with what the standards should be. Some of the commonalities are that all of our standards tended to rely on different sources. So there were international sources, there were national sources, there were regional sources, there were state sources, and there were even academic sources. So even some of our standards put back and said, hey, look at this paper, they did it a good way. And it really depended on where that particular discipline was in the process of coming together as a community. So if you look at biology has already gone through great lengths internationally to come up with standards. And therefore, they had a really good list of groups to already rely on, where something like geology was a little bit farther behind on thinking about like what those standards should be. And so it all depended on where that particular discipline was in the process of going forward with those standards. So as I said before, experts recommended standards from a plethora of sources and institutions. There wasn't a good one-stop shop for this. There was not a go-to source. And some of the common resources that we did find were that people were recommending oceansbestpractices.org for some of the protocols and data collection protocols that they were recommending. They were recommending GridC as a good option for data archiving. And then they were recommending a couple of different international and national groups to get those data standards, including the International Hydrographic Organization. So those were somewhat common resources, but again, they were coming from all over the place. And so it really was interesting that we do have a lot of work still to do, even though we have good data standards that we can rely on and kind of coming together even broader internationally, maybe, or nationally to make these danger standards more consistent. Okay, so then we would put it back out to the community for an agreement survey to say, what do you guys think about this? Are you going to adopt this? Would you agree to use this in your research? And again, we saw that we had a broad group of people from across different institutions. So some academics, mostly federal and state and local government, but also some private sector as well. And that when you look at their expertise, so this is on a 0 to 5 scale, where 5 is considered themselves really highly expert. We tended to have people that felt that they were more of an expert in geology or biology, whereas like the oceanography group didn't find themselves as much of an expert in it. So that again shows the disciplinary differences between some of these groups. Okay, I don't want you to look at the numbers in detail. I'm just going to point out some main trends that we found. So these are just the means of both the agreement and likelihood. And agreement is on a 7-point scale, and likelihood of adoption is on a 5-point scale. But first of all, we found that people tended to agree more and were more likely to adopt both the metadata and data archiving standards, and they were the data collection and data processing standards. And this is probably because data collection and data processing can often be, bespoke, can be specific to one particular study. It's something that we tend to do that isn't necessarily something that we at first think, oh, I'm going to make this standardized across what people are doing in the whole region. So those tended to be lower scores, I think, for that reason. But we did see some agreement on metadata and data archiving. The second thing I wanted to point out was that bathymetry and backscatter and biology tended to have the higher scores as well. And again, I think this points to these disciplines having more collective agreement on data standards already, more movement towards having those data standards already than, say, chemistry, geology, or oceanography. So really seeing some disciplinary differences when it comes to agreement and likelihood of adoption. Again, we are working on this paper currently. We're hoping to get it submitted in this next month. And we have like a full draft, and we're just editing it. So be on the lookout. This should be coming out pretty soon with these data standards. And so I took you through, I think that missed something. Okay, so I was also going to say here that the other thing that we're doing is going to be taking these and both presenting them to decision makers and also starting to do some workshops to help people understand what the data standards are and what the landscape is of data standards and how to produce open data for themselves. Okay, so now I've talked about this second objective. The last objective is building a tool to support the chosen framework, and that was really this last year. And so Sherry, one of our PI team, has been working on this spatial metadata investigator, and it's a tool to take metadata and make sure that it has the correct fields and try to put it into an XML format that's ready to go for when you want to have open data. The one that she's made is in particular to the IHO S100 standard, which is standard that qualifies for like navigation, but also habitat and things like that in the marine environment. And so it takes your data and puts it in that particular format. So the first thing that it does is you can either make a whole new file or you can upload an existing file, and it will take the data from your existing file and pre-populate the fields for you. Or you can go in and create that file, and it gives you an idea of what each piece that you need is and what is required and what's not required based on the standard, and then it will export an XML file for you. So we're currently in the process of trying to transfer this tool into probably FIO's hands to try to get it in a place where it's readily accessible for everyone. So be on the lookout for that too in the coming months. We're really excited about that. Oh yeah, and we're hoping to deploy the tool in the next coming months. So I've been through all three of these things to give you an idea of where we come. It's kind of been a crazy path to get through this project, but we are here towards the end now. Again, we're going to be taking this project and making some more plain language documents to help the public and people in general try to understand open data more. We're hoping to meet with some data decision makers in the state to show them what we've done and try to see if they agree with the standards. And then we're also going to be doing some workshops for data producers to try to reach more people with this work. And just some lessons learned. Disciplinary experts are really hard to get in a room. I'm sure we've all felt that pain when you have a doodle or a when to meet, and it's really hard to get people to find time. So that was a challenging process. When many perspectives are involved, there will be different quality of outcomes, especially disciplinarily, and there's no one-stop shop for this stuff. It's kind of by discipline. Data sharing is an important process for scientific advancement, and it's not as widespread or expected. As metadata is often lacking, we found really interesting results as far as like how many people are doing metadata. And we're really hoping that this moves consensus forward for data standardization along the West Florida Shelf. Okay, thank you.
Any questions online yet, Amber?
Yeah, I've got a question. So thank you for presenting on that.
Yeah.
Did anything stand out for a potential tool or platform to make data discovery, not necessarily discipline specific, but, you know, just kind of Uber level of finding these things?
Oh, you're talking to another project of mine. No, but we weren't looking for that. But I do think a lot about data curation, which is what you're talking about, trying to make data discoverable, trying to create a place where you have more examples of data pulling from diverse sources, like not in a repository, but trying to say, this is the best data available for this particular topic. And I think there's a real need for that because it's everywhere. Data is everywhere. It's tucked into all these little spots and it's hard to find. And as particularly if you're not an expert on that particular data set and you're looking for something to pull into something else, it can be really challenging. So I think that's super important. And I think that there should be more movement on it. So. Yes.
To Renee's point, I think the diver interface that NOAA has created is probably about the best I've seen in terms of like data discovery. You know, I didn't know they had that, you know, kind of thing. And it layers, right? So something on that side of the ball, I think that would be helpful for a project like FSMI, right? I have a question or a comment, Anna. Thank you for the presentation. You know, a lot of the best practices you talked about in the first part of your talk are primarily on the data providing things, but I think there's also an obligation on the part of the data users to actually acknowledge the source of the data that they're using. And we've seen a lot of instances where, you know, data go up to a public database and it's like they were never collected by any person or institution. They're just common property. People invest a lot of time and effort in cleaning data and getting it there. And I think we need another standard about data acknowledgement so that, you know, going forward, you know, people get, you know, encouragement to collect data, right? And so, you know, this thing all starts with data collection. And if we can't encourage, like, for example, institutions to fund data collection, you know, as a, you know, in a sort of continuum with data analysis, then we kind of cut ourselves off at the knees, you know. So I do think there's, and we've had actual instances of this where people are actually making for-profit companies on the data that we provided to, you know, because they're institution. It's fine. Acknowledge where the data come from.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot about understanding licenses, like understanding what you need to, and etiquette, right? Like basic etiquette on how to use something. I also think that people are sometimes don't understand the limitations of the data that they're using because they just are not taking the time to even read the data file. So, yeah, there's huge. I agree with you. Standards for me.
Brian Condon from Sailrun. Great presentation. And I know this was probably beyond out of scope at the point you started doing this project. But if you started looking at GeoAI and seeing how an AI system that's tuned to look at these kind of data might be able to actually take these standards and apply them to data and automate a lot of the, you know, getting it available to others.
Yeah, you're right about it being out of scope, but that I think, you know, I think a lot of the things we're doing right now feel like, oh, in 2 years this will be obsolete, right?
You got to train the system, right?
Yeah.
You got to give the system something to use. So
Right.
to me, that would looks like what the next step.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that would be great. And I think it would make it a lot easier to do, well, to have people make more metadata files they're useful.
Excuse me, your tool that you were describing, is that like to pull in like an ASCII data set? It or?
Yeah, so it'll pull in, at the moment, I think it pulls in XML and text files. I don't even know about ASCII. I'm not, I'll have to ask the
Text
developer.
file, you know, comments unlimited.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Rearrange it.
Yeah, so it's looking for particular keywords out of that file and putting them into the places.
Could you share your paper that you did in the chat for later, maybe?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Thank you. Okay, next we have an online presentation with FCMaP. Stop. Are you there? And unmute and turn your camera on if you want and share your screen.
Yes, good morning.
Okay.
Yes, now I got the option, yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeuso Alugo. I'm the GIS administrator for the Office of Resiliency and Coastal Protection within the Department of Environmental Protection. Are you guys able to hear me? Fine?
Yes.
Perfect. So we're going to be sharing today a little bit of an overview for our data management flow within this project, within the FSMI project. Yes. So we're going to be covering a little bit of an overview of what's the project, the expected data deliverables or our product deliverables, our initial management, data management approach, a general flow for how the data and everything is moving, a little bit of our internal data flow, a little bit of the challenges that we face with this approach, and next steps after the collection is completed. As an overview, the Florida Seafloor Mapping Initiative, it has a goal to collect high quality seafloor data within the Florida coastal waters, all the way to the continental shelf. We approach this with two-phase project two-phase collection with the LiDAR and the sonar. And we use and leverage the efforts from the prioritization studies from the FCMaP. And we collaborated with federal partners alongside with other internal agencies and state agencies for using existing data and for finding extra additional areas of prioritization as well. So we have the project divided the project areas. The initiative divided the project areas into 6 regions. We subdivided them in 0 to 20 and 20 to 200 to the continental shelf. The idea was to use LiDAR as much as possible and then fill in with sonar where there were voids or whether laser extinction was reached. Overall, we had a total data collection of about 75,000 square kilometers for LiDAR. And the anticipated final date for completion is to be this September 2025. That's all areas, all contractors. For sonar collection, we kind of divided the project areas a little bit different. So we divided by project depth mostly. So we have the shallow, which is like 0 to 20 meters, then 20 to 200, 200, and then 100 to 200. It was awarded based on need and priority and void areas as well. So we have a total of 64,000 square kilometers approximately. And there was like the initial award and like subsequent awards for data collection. For this, the anticipated collection is for all regions, all vendors, July 2026. For project deliverables, we base on the deliverables for this project based on standards and requirements that are already in place by other federal agencies. So for the LiDAR, we use the base specifications from USGS. They have a robust set of specs, which also ties into getting that data set, resulting data sets into the 3DEP program, which is the nationwide elevation model. We will be receiving from the LiDAR classified point cloud data per Earth DEM for every region, related GIS data, related LiDAR mapping reports as well. And for sonar, we base on the NOAA's hydrographic survey specifications. So we'll be receiving a sonar point cloud, kind of the equivalent GSF format, bathymetric attributed grid, which is a raster DM as well, and all related sonar reports as well. So our initial data management approach, we wanted no physical hard drives. This was request particularly pointed out by our state geographic information officer from previous experiences. So this is based on the terrestrial LiDAR collection in which it was a bit of a lot of physical hard drive, a lot of data. So it makes it into a lot of physical hardware management. Sorry. So all data to be delivered through online cloud services. And then initially we wanted the vendors to be, to add on to that cost of the collection on the contract, and each one set up their cloud. But finally, the implemented solution is that we found that it was easier if the department would be responsible for the cloud services setup. So the department would cover all the costs related to the management, the egress and ingress of the data. So we would use the existing cloud service provider, and we would create or allocate block storage containers to use on the data, to store the data, right? And the access to outside vendors would be managed by security groups. And that's kind of a feature of the service, of the cloud provider service. So our general data flow, the department cloud service provider is Microsoft Azure. So we expand on the capacity of our storage, and we created internal security groups within the service. So we also created a general project Outlook account. So the way it flows is we give access, or we invite each vendor staff members to our general Outlook account. and then we assign them to specific security groups, which then get access to specific blob storage containers. And then we would get access to all those containers, and we would download the data here in-house. So from the internal data flow, so one of the things that we find out really quick is that we needed to upgrade hardware. Even though most of the data is being submitted through the cloud services, we still needed to download all that data to perform like our general data review and checks. So we got a couple of hard drives and extra high power computers, and we download all the data in which to these central workstations, and then we kind of assign to different staff members for review. Then our contract manager, project manager would get back to vendors and provide feedbacks to their project managers, and then in turn they would share with the rest of the staff. So how to manage such a large quantity of data? So we're talking about thousands of square kilometers. So one of the things initially we were brainstorming about, it was those two things: how to manage, how to break the project areas into more bit-sized pieces, and how to allow for the vendors to bill more frequently, like invoice more frequently as well. Because I mean, the total project time will be a year, 2 years, right? So we divided each region for 20% portions, equally divided, right? So that way, for on the LiDAR collection, so vendors will be able to collect an amount of data, right, field data, and then pre-process that data to some extent, and then submit that as a preliminary data collection, right? So preliminary collected data. So we would perform some QA, and then we would approve and then move on to the next, right? So that would allow to give us here in-house a look of how the data collection is going, and we will host weekly meetings or frequent meetings with vendors, and then discuss any issues or timeframes or any of the feedback provided from the data collection review. So just to give a look of kind of the size and quantity of the data. So for LiDAR collection, we use the grid, the national grid, so 1 square kilometer grid size. The data was required to be a tile deliverable. So for each square kilometers, we will get 1 file. So, but because we divided the data, the collection, into preliminary data, and then we also going to be receiving final data, so that kind of doubles some of that file and storage requirements. So overall, for the total awarded area on LiDAR, 75,000 square kilometers, we're expecting around 120,000 files, data files, and storage size is requirement would be on the 11.3 terabytes, 11.25 estimated. And that's only on the data files storage requirements. We're not taking into account any raster data, the DMs. We have not received those yet in-house. So that's also final product expected to be delivered at the end of the project. So, or related reports or related GIS data. So the average size we found, it was about 94 ranges, 94 of megabytes per 1 kilometer of data file. And that's compressed. So this is LAZ file, not the LAS point cloud data file. On the sonar side, similarly, they're not delivering, we're not receiving tiles, so we allow the vendors to divide their project areas as they were more efficient. They found to be more efficient. So but similarly to the collection, it was subdivided. The threshold are 10%, so there's an initial deliverable expected at the 10% data collection of that project area, then a 50%, and then 100%. And I believe this is expected to be the final collection, the final data set per each one of these milestones. So on sonar data collection storage, so we have awarded a total of 64,000 square kilometers, and the anticipated storage size is about 35 terabytes of space. We estimated that for every 1 square kilometer of data, of area, it requires 530 megabytes of space. And this is a very wide range because we found that with sonar data, the data size varies greatly with depth. So we only have estimates for what we have in-house. Again, and this is not counting, this is only estimates for the data files themselves, not the related products like back files, the raster files, any reports, pictures, or other miscellaneous data as well. It's kind of an early estimate because there's a lot of regions that we haven't received data yet. Okay, so a little bit on the challenges of adopting this cloud storage service approach for data management. So on the technical issue side, one of the things that we encountered was a lot of the setup of the accounts. It was oftentimes it's a straightforward process, but the initial setup is it could have a bit of a technical when setting up the accounts on the vendor side and there in our side to make sure that all the permissions are in place and double checking every single container and access level permission. So yeah, we faced a few instances where the data collection, the data collecting vendors would have issues uploading the data to our block containers. And sometimes with the network in-house data download, that's more of a stability of the connection and like connection speed. Overall, it's a very straightforward process, and we had great experience overall. That's some of the technical issues. On the logistical side, it was one more additional project to manage and to our existing IT office, so that they're already kind of max out working functionally. So the request time for some of the assistance that we needed had a longer turnout time. And for most of their IT team, it was a relatively new approach to allow vendors to get this level of access to our internal cloud services and storage containers. So there was a bit of a learning curve of how to manage all the permissions, how to allocate the security groups and all that stuff. So next step after collection. So at some point in the midst of the project, we were made aware that there are some sensitive sites that may need to be scrubbed from the data. So we're talking about like historical sites, archaeological sites, and other military sites that normally would be excluded from the public data. So we're working with state agencies like the Department of State, the Geological Survey, the Navy, the NOAA, and we're to collaborate and to get the data, identify those sites and get those out of the public data set. So, which adds a little bit of time. So after all the collection is done, that's kind of our very next step. After that's done, we're anticipating to work with federal partners to share the data and to allow for the public to access. We're tagging specifically for this LiDAR data. We're in contact with the NOAA Remote Sensing Division. They have already a cloud service provided in place. In an initial meetings with them, an estimated, it says the data is all in-house and ready to go. It will take a couple of, let's say about a week to make sure that all the data is transferred, and then an estimated for a couple of months before all that data is up to onto the web, published. So they run their own processes, in-house processes for checking all the documentation and all the data, metadata, for making sure that all those things are in place. For the sonar bathymetric data, we're recently in contact with NOAA, NOS, and CEI. Unfortunately, they told us that at this time they do not have a online cloud service provider in place. They're working on it, but not at this moment. So normal data sharing is through physical hard drives or FTP links, kind of sort of online service. So we'll see. I mean, ideally, if they do finish their process, we hope that we're able to just simply transfer from our cloud service provider to theirs. And last but not least, we're also transferring the data to USGS CONET, which they will be in charge. They're our partner that will be in charge to stitching all the digital elevation models together from all the regions, from all the data collection sources. So LiDAR, sonar, all the 6 regions, everything. And I'm sure you're going to hear more of them later today. But yeah, it's a very exciting last step. So then once everything is collected and all share and is done, so we'll be reaching out and coordinating. We hopefully that a lot of the people will be making use of this data. We had already a couple of data requests that unfortunately, some of them we have to reject, some of them we evaluate case by case. Again, a lot of the data we have in-house, especially for LiDAR, is still preliminary. So we still are waiting for that final delivered, fully post-processed data set. Right. So that is all we have for today. Thank you for listening, and please let us know if you have any questions.
Any questions? Gerald?
I'll start. Thank you very much for that presentation. I just had one question on the data availability. You had mentioned that the bathymetric LiDAR was being transferred to the NOAA Remote Sensing Division. Does that
Yes.
ultimately mean it's going to be available on Digital Coast like a lot of other LiDAR data sets are, or not?
Yes, our intent is for all this data to be available at the NOAA Digital Coast portal. However, we also be making it available in the Florida Geographic Information Office webpage. So there'll be kind of a simplified version, probably like a compressed, like all the DMs and all these more end products will be available there as well. But yes, most of the data, the point cloud, the DMs, should be available through NOAA Digital Coast when everything is transferred. Yeah.
Anyone else? Steve?
Dale, Steve Morosky here. Thank you very much for this great update. That your penultimate slide there about the next steps, it looks like it's primarily data archival, right? And so I have this image in the back of my mind of the last scene out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it goes into this warehouse, never seen again. So my point here is, and this is above your pay grade, we need a data exploitation strategy for these data because, this is unprecedented amount of money invested by the state of Florida, and we need to show the payoff to, a vast, group of people if we ever want to approach this again, and so we need to think about, data products, how do we pump this out so people can use it in their, on their boats? Can they, coffee table books, things that we can give to legislators about the value of these things. And so, we as a community really need to think about this because it is unprecedented. And we want to go back to the well because, even with 64,000 square kilometers, that's only a third of the Florida shelf, right? And so we need more.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I know that Kim Jackson, another head of state agencies and like stakeholders, as you mentioned, like people will above, they are in discussions, and I believe some of the initial brainstorming included some specific highlights on websites, story maps, and a lot of the GIS applications, development of GIS applications that uses this data, emphasize all the products, the end products that we have that would be available at the end. So yeah, but for sure, way
But
more
the state
can
of
be.
California did a really good job with theirs. They basically did the same thing. And they have a really great, data portal, which is more than just data, it's these products, right?
Mhm. We'll definitely be looking into their portal then.
One thing to add to that, that would be valuable to current efforts, and it might be a question for Kim, a simple base layer, just cache, so we can add these to the tools that we already have. Once this is all, I know this is down the road, once you have, processed it, but that will be extremely valuable. We have a decision support tool we're putting together right now, and symmetry is going to be a really critical part of that as a base layer. Just something that serves it out quick and easy for people to pull from.
Yeah.
I don't know if if that's in the works or in the plan, make it available like that.
Yeah, I believe, I think at least one, we know one of our divisions for sure will be using will be on the US CONET, that seamless DEM model. So I know that a lot of our, like on grant sections and our efforts on resilience here at the department are waiting for those data sets for their modeling, right? So definitely a lighter DM cache could be useful for sure.
More thing, I know we're getting one time. Building on what Steve was saying, and I don't know, I mean, it's under discussion whether like this is something that FCMaP will continue to do as part of our strategy going into the future, but somehow tracking and maintaining what people are using the data for through time, right? That's getting at what, because that's building that value through understanding how people are using the data. And again, across academia, state, social, whatnot. So I don't know if that's going to be our role or not, or if the state was planning on doing anything like that together.
Tracking, similarly to previous concept of highlighting the success story. So it's definitely on the talks, but yeah, definitely a question that probably more related to Kim Jackson.
Thank you, Gio.
Thank you.
It's good.
Thank you, Gio. And so next we have Jennifer and Paul Turner. Are you both able to unmute? I'm not sure which one is first or if you're tag teaming it, but you can share your slides, you can turn on your camera, whatever you.
Gave the prompt to Jennifer.
Okay.
Oh, are you presenting or is Paul?
I think Paul is going to present.
And we are gonna tag team. He's gonna share a screen and kick things off, and then I'll wrap it up. And we were just chatting. We'll turn our screens on at the end for Q&A if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, and hi everyone, I'm here. I'm working on sharing the screen at the moment. Here we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? I'm Paul Turner with NOAA's Office of Coast Survey. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person. I thoroughly enjoy our visits down to FCMaP and USF, but I wasn't able to be there this week. But I'm here this morning. We're co-leading rather this presentation on data sharing with Jennifer Jenks from NOAA's NCEI. And we're going to start off here with just an overview really of the Standard Ocean Mapping Protocol and some of the data sharing and management components of that particular document. And I will start off here. Before we dive into the SOMP, start a little bit from the beginning of why it was ever developed to begin with, and it's in response to the National Ocean Mapping Exploration and Characterization Strategy, which was also drafted and compiled in response to President Trump's executive order from his first term in 2019. Which was to coordinate and establish better ocean mapping, exploration, characterization, and mapping, which that then led to the formation of the NOMEC Council. From the NOMEC Council, we then, we then wrote the NOMEC strategy, identifying a number of things, which you can read a little more in depth if you'd like. There's a hot link here on my slide, but some of the key points were to enhance opportunities for collaboration with and map the U.S. EEZ, identify priority areas within our U.S. EEZ, and map, explore, and characterize those. The National Ocean Mapping Exploration and Characterization Strategy was largely written from the Interagency Working Group on Ocean and Coastal Mapping, which is also, there's a hyperlink there, who also helped write the SOMP. But some of the key elements within the NOMEC strategy were really identifying areas of interest and priority areas, developing ideas and methods to explore, map, and characterize those, with the idea of providing acquisition and processing guidance, encouraging wider access to data and data management practices, which is what we're going to really focus on here this morning, minimizing duplication, and establishing and using national data standards. From the NOMEC strategy, we then developed the Standard Ocean Mapping Protocol. It addresses Objective 2 within the NOMEC strategy, which said develop the Standard Ocean Mapping Protocol. That was also largely written from the Interagency Working Group on Ocean and Coastal Mapping, along with some additional subject matter experts from the different federal agencies that make up the working group. This slide is just a really big, quick overview of the SOMP. And there is also a hyperlink at the bottom if you'd like to read the entire document. The bullets here at the bottom are each a dedicated chapter within the document. And we're going to mostly be focusing on data management and data stewardship, which is chapter 1. Each chapter listed on here also has a brief section in it on data management, but it's largely covered in full in the data management chapter, where we compiled guidance and best practices that are already, for the most part, in use in the industry, and putting them all into one place, identifying a national archive, and providing guidance on how to go about archiving and submitting data to it. Each chapter in here have one slide on really not focusing more on the aspects of the chapter, just how the data management standards are all intertwined together. So we will go to the first slide. Sorry, before we get into the chapters, I have 1 or 2 slides, just a brief overview of the Standard Ocean Mapping Protocol. And this slide kind of addresses some of the wide audience and data collectors that can utilize the protocol. Of course, this is not exhaustive by any means, but just some of the areas in industry that can use it. And that brings us to chapter 1. This was written in large part by NOAA's NCEI with help from other partnering subject matter experts from the other agencies, and that really focused on FAIR, which was findable, accessible, reusable, and interoperable. Kind of that was the mindset behind it. Data is difficult and expensive to collect, and we want to minimize duplication and utilize existing data as much as we can, rather. So that kind of the focus, overarching theme of the SOMP, really. And data can be used in different applications. We identify 6 of those large applications in the SOMP and have a chapter for each one of them. It also goes into integrating and analysis, attributes, spatial reference, equipment, and metadata, standards and best practices. It also identifies the tools and repositories, which we have identified in the SOMP anyways as NOAA's National Centers for Environmental Information. And the submissions to archive and repositories have long-term preservation, which I think Jennifer will further explain in her talk here in a few minutes, and the interoperability and reusability of the data so they can be used for more than just one application. However, we do actually emphasize in our SOMP that there are needs and reasons for single source data application, but for those outside of that, we're looking to promote wide use of data more than one time. Here's our bathymetry chapter 2, that focuses on 4 data sources from single beam, multi-beam, LiDAR, and phase difference bathymetric sonar. We're in the middle of actually adding a new bathy source to this chapter for satellite-derived bathymetry. That's in the works now, and we hope to have that incorporated and published this year. Later this summer, we're striving to have a public notice put out for public input and comment and review. So stay tuned for that. And there's just some overview of some of the aspects of the bathy chapter, which I won't read verbatim, but you can see on here. We largely use the IHO standards, along with some coast survey standards and some deep water mapping standards from NOAA's Office of Exploration. Let's see, we cover system calibration, QA/QC, resolution, uncertainty, gridded data, and of course, data management, which is upfront in each chapter and really addressed in the first chapter for data management. Chapter 3 is dedicated to side scan and, sorry, not side scan, backscatter, pardon me. And we discussed the utility, the challenges, and some of the goals of backscatter data. This one's a little more complicated. So there's quite a few references to some other industry standards to help us with best practices for utilizing backscatter. In water column, we do quite a bit of water column data acquisition with NOAA. I know some of the other partnering agencies do as well. So this chapter was, I thought, really well done and written by a really great group of subject matter experts who identified some of the aspects of utilizing water column, again, the data management aspects of it, and some of the overarching goals of single versus multi-beam sonar acquisition, calibration, quality control, and application. Here's side scan. I got ahead of myself a little bit ago. We talked through again some of the same recurring themes, but this just goes into the aspects of data, side scan, sonar data acquisition and management, and some of the utility of it. Again, I won't go overly in depth rather of this chapter. I'm reading the bullets. And brings us to sub-bottom. This was more or less written by USGS and some of our BOEM folks who do a little more sub-bottom profiling acquisition than we do in NOAA. But again, recurring themes using data standards and industry standards for acquiring data that can be used more than one time, and obviously with an emphasis on archival and data standards. And our last chapter was on magnetometry, factors influencing data quality, sensitivity and accuracy, validation, management, of course, and processing of mag data. And so at this point, I think I'm going to be handing the mic over here to Jennifer Jenks from NOAA's NCI, and she will further discuss utility of data management and archive.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Paul. Can everybody hear me out there?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So exactly. I mean, as Paul was, was saying in the first half here, it's collecting and processing and archiving these data to establish standards. We all know, we're all preaching to the choir here, that in doing that, we will ultimately expand the utility of these data for so many uses. So I'm just going to wrap this presentation up with a handful of slides that are going to focus on what it actually means to get these data into the public archives, and specifically to NOAA's National Centers for Environmental Information, or NCI. And I recognize that, it's the planning and the collecting of the data that's the fun and exciting part. And this is the bit that most people may have run out of resources to do, or certainly in most cases what we've seen falls pretty much at the bottom of the priority list. And so this is where we come in, trying to change opinion about that, and then trying to provide resources to improve the chances that these data are gonna find that good home, and be ready for the next generation of users. So since I can't see you all in the room, and I don't know how familiar you are, I am going to give a bit of the background. NCI is responsible for hosting and providing access to one of the world's largest archives of not just geophysical data, which is what we're really focusing on here, but also atmospheric, coastal, and oceanic data from around the world. And as such, we are the nation's leading authority for environmental information. Next slide, Paul. And so exactly, so we are considered the steward of the nation's environmental information, and the little tagline we like to throw out there is that we're talking about data that spans from the Stone Age to the space age, from the depths of the ocean to the sun and across the globe. Next slide. So this is pretty formal. This really used to just be kind of an NCI internal slide, but I think that there is a lot of relevance in sharing it with the public, because the intent here is to show that data stewardship goes well beyond just storage. It really does involve the preservation of data, to be sure, but metadata generation, quality control. In many cases, depending on the data, it also involves creating products and ultimately creating scientifically authoritative records. And NCI, our intent is to support all of these levels when required to, or when requested to. Next slide. And of course, we are guided by FAIR principles. We are committed to providing easy and open access to all public data, recognizing that that's much easier to be said than to do, but it is what we strive for. When it comes to our geophysical data sets, we really do rely on maps and geospatial products in enabling data discovery, because we do understand from the community that discovery is what enables the reuse of data. And again, it's that reuse that increases the value. At the same time, we have been undergoing a multi-year effort, and we have multi-years to go in the future, to migrate all of our data holdings from our tape storage to the cloud, for several reasons, but one of them is in theory, to ultimately improve the direct access of these data and to facilitate their use for both any sort of on-premise applications within NOAA, as well as cloud native processing. Next slide. Okay, so now that was kind of a little big picture NCI, and now we're zooming in a bit more to the geophysical sciences branch, which is where I serve as a team lead here in Boulder. Next slide. And of course, our geophysical data holdings also represent the largest repository of ocean mapping data in the world. And of course, again, it's the stewardship, the discovery, access, and product development, which is our focus. And we are talking data, including all of the data sets that Paul just walked through, that are collected and contributed and used. And of course, this is coming into us from government agencies, academia, and the public, both here in the US and international sources. And these data, amongst many things, do strongly support NOAA's strategic plan objectives. Next slide. And again, I already mentioned this about increasing the public value of data and products. And how we do that, as you all know, that first bullet, that, streamlining acquisition and processing, that certainly falls out of NCI's scope. That's really up to folks like you all. But it is the bottom three bullets that we take seriously, trying to lower the barriers, to have the community share their data with the archive, to have a seat at the table on developing common standards, and again, that facilitating discovery and access. Next slide. So just a little cartoon just showing the variety of contributors that we have providing these data coming in from, again, industry to academia to other federal agencies and state agencies as well. Next slide. Okay, so now just kind of getting to the nuts and bolts, and my intent here is really just to allow all of you to know that these resources exist. I mean, basically this URL that's listed right here is going to be your first stop to get to learn more about data submission guidelines and what we provide for the community to use. And of course, my email address is at the first slide, and I think we have it at the last slide. So very happy to follow up and have a more in-depth conversation. But the takeaway here is we have over the years put together data management guidelines, metadata templates, and tools to help encourage data collectors into becoming data contributors, because we do know that there is still a really big gap from one to the other. Next slide. So for the data sets that Paul just walked through, we do have standalone pages that detail how to package, how to submit, what it is that that data formats that we're willing to take, and which formats we might need to have a more of a conversation about. Next slide. And so here we'll just kind of use the example of bathymetry. We do detail general information about what it is we typically archive. In the case of bathymetry, primarily it is raw bathymetric data, but we will certainly also talk about process versions as well and what might need to accompany those data sets. We do talk about file formats. And next slide. And then, of course, metadata, from just the mandatory metadata fields to Then the nice to haves, which we strongly encourage a provider to provide. We also discuss DOIs and whether or not you as a data provider would like to have a DOI minted by NCI, or if you want to provide your own. All of that level of information is captured here online. Next page, next slide. And then, and yes, I recognize none of this is super exciting, but it's important to know. Gone are the days where we will just accept a hard drive filled with what we lovingly refer to as a data dump. And we say that because we still have data dumps that we can't that have been sitting there collecting dust for over a decade now that we'll never be able to figure out. So we will not take data unless it is organized in a way that we can understand. And so we do have recommended data file structures that you can go in and take this and package the data yourself. Or next slide. And then we have been investing project dollars to really trying to make even that step easier. And so this has been presented on at all different forums. We do have a cruise pack data packager tool. It is a standalone tool that almost everyone can use. It's free, it's easy to download. It provides a simple user interface that facilitates in creating metadata for both cruise level and data set level, and does the automatic organization for you. And so these are the sorts of things that we are constantly working with the community to improve upon. It has certainly transformed over the years, and it is something, again, we recognize if we're sitting here asking all of you, hey, we need this data packaged up in this pretty way, make it happen, the least we can do is give you the tools to do so. Next slide. And then we go into the information about data submission methods. One of these days, hopefully everything will be hooked up to the cloud and it'll make everyone's life easier, but we're not there yet. And the reality is, for any large data set, it's external hard drives. That's how we receive data from the NOAA fleet. That's how we receive data from Fugro. In some cases, such as with UNOL's R2R, we are able to set up an rsync connection, but that is pretty rare, but there are options. And so that information is detailed here. And again, everything I'm showing here is just step one. Step two is, of course, just setting up that conversation and figuring out what makes the most sense for both parties. Next slide. And everyone's favorite motto, I know we all have it tattooed somewhere: collect once, use many times. This is the way NCI can participate, in this mantra. This is what we can offer, is trying to really aid in the management of data, of any organization's data, to make sure all the money you all are putting into collecting these data are accessible, are usable, are secure, and are trustworthy for the rest of the community. And of course, the responsibility really does span not through every stage of the life cycle, from the creation of these data all the way to when they are finally archived, because no one knows better than you all that these data are resource intensive to collect. In many cases, might not be collected again. And so the onus really is on us to ensure the long-term stewardship. And next slide. And there you go. Thank you. Paul and I would be happy to take your questions.
Questions? Anybody? Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Paul. If no questions, we'll go ahead and move on to our break. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your participation. We will have a break then. We'll come back at 10:45. So
Yeah, everybody drink coffee. Yeah.
Drink coffee.
Where'd she go?
Roll.
Oh.
They kind of. This is that.
Okay.
No, for operation, covered all. Forget to go. Yeah, so that.
Okay, next, we will hear from Anthony Clem. Anthony, are you with us right now? You can unmute and if you'd like, turn on your camera and share your screen.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me. I'm excited to present today. I love the opportunity to talk about crowdsourced bathymetry. I'm going to get my presentation started up here. Hopefully it all works. So, and share. Okay. We'll do this one. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see that.
Yes, we
We'll
can.
skip back all the way to the beginning. There's a quick preview. Everyone sees exactly what I'm going to talk about. So I'm about done. All right. Again, Anthony Clem, I work for NOAA Coast Survey's development lab, and I've been involved with crowdsourced bathymetry for several years now, working directly with Jen Jenks, who is the chair of the IHO's crowdsourced bathymetry working group. And so I just really want to shout out and just say how much I appreciate her leadership and kind of especially thought leadership in this space and getting it started from the ground up. Hopefully I can share a few updates about what NOAA Coast Survey has been doing with crowdsourced bathymetry, what our thoughts are on use cases, and some preliminary results on our evaluation of the quality of the data. Just so it's not a crowdsourced bathymetry presentation without this awesome depiction from COMET. You know, we as the nation's chart makers and kind of congressionally mandated to map the seafloor to support safe navigation. To, you know, we're looking for data from all different types of sources, and we recognize that, you know, there's no one tool that's going to be best to map all the coastal areas, and so we want to get used to using and looking at data sources. Well, data from sources from a variety of different platforms, whether they be, you know, uncrewed systems, you know, surface ships, or airborne LiDAR bathymetry, like those cool presentations yesterday. But also we think that crowdsourced bathymetry has some type of space and has potential to provide a lot of value to our efforts in mapping the seafloor and supporting safe navigation. So thank you, COMET USF, for allowing me to share this. In the context of the IHO, we do have a very specific definition of crowdsourced bathymetry, and I'm going to read that. This is defined as a collection and sharing of depth measurements from vessels using standard navigation instruments while engaged in routine maritime operations. That's important to note if you're going to be talking about crowdsourced bathymetry in the international space, especially in the context of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea and the different varying interpretations of that UN convention. So, you know, we have been involved working side by side with NCEI and the IHO and building up this the infrastructure needed to host and to discover and process crowdsourced bathymetry. Of course, the CSB data that we are using and interested in is all being hosted at NCEI and the IHO Data Center for Digital Bathymetry. The developers there have made amazing strides in making sure that the data is characterized correctly and also accessible in lots of different ways, including cloud services. We and CoSurvey were interested in this and engaged with some navigation software companies such as RosePoint to help develop the capability and the option for their users to automatically log their Echo Sounder or Fish Finder data, match it up with their location and time data of their GNSS receiver, and then send that data in a structured and standardized format to NCEI. And so that was kind of like our big first project into getting this off the ground. And RosePoint is, I think, still the #1 contributor to the DCDB, like the crowdsourced bathymetry data holdings. We first did this pilot actually hosted on the NOAA research vessel Bay Hydro 2, kind of taking internal log files, parsing out the Echo Sounder and GPS data as a proof of concept. And we saw right away that, like, wow, this is great information that we can use for reconnaissance and for detecting potential chart discrepancies or anomalies. I'm going to skip that and go right to, kind of our overview of our main use cases, what we're thinking here. And that's #1, filling the gaps. And that, I think that's like the name of this section of FCMaP. The summit is like filling in the gaps. And so we really feel that crowdsourced bathymetry, when handled and characterized correctly, and also processed correctly, then we can hopefully fill in some of the gaps in our data holdings. Like, for example, this picture here where a glacier has receded over time, and therefore we don't have any bathymetry because last time anyone was up there to survey, that area was inaccessible. But now, like, there's adventuresome tour groups and stuff taking people like my grandma right up to the terminus of the glacier, which are in uncharted waters. And so I think we should all feel like we should try our best to use as much information that's out there as available to help support safe navigation. We also feel like this kind of data intelligence will help us detect chart discrepancies, and we want to try and create automated processes to find discrepancy hotspots based on crowdsourced bathymetry over time, and maybe even plugging this into our larger models, we call our hydro health models, that help us determine where we may need to prioritize where we want to survey. And also there is real potential for crowdsourced bathymetry to be used as reconnaissance data for safer field operations. Just filling in a little bit more, crowdsourced bathymetry, I think, is very, very valuable in places that are historically turbid. We saw areas yesterday, I think from Fugro or Wolpert, where they were showing, like, man, there's just some places that are hard to really detect the bottom just due to this consistent turbidity. And so if a boat goes through there and is collecting acoustic data, that's a potential for that crowdsourced bathymetry to fill in some of those gaps. So what we're doing here in CoSurvey, as we're interested in this data, we're building out a data pipeline where we scrape the data from the data holdings at in CEI via the cloud and their APIs that connect to the cloud, and then process it, correct it for tides, and all that kind of stuff. We're right now using using the discrete zone tide model from NOAA co-ops. They have an incredible API to download tide data from their reference tide stations, as well as like historical tide stations that we can use to correct our tide data. But we're also looking at other models, maybe more offshore, that might be more appropriate, or where the co-op's tide model is lacking, such as like what we call the Aviso Plus FES 2014 model that is used, that was built from like satellite altimetry as well as ground truth through land-based reference stations. We do a lot of statistical analysis to compare against reference bathymetry. We use, in this data pipeline, we're fully reliant on the NOAA National Bathymetric Source Blue Topo model. Although in smaller localized areas, you could just provide your own input raster for reference bathymetry, such as a bag or a geotiff. But we use that comparison against the reference bathymetry after we tide correct the data to look for and derive any vertical biases that could be interpreted as like a transducer draft of a vessel, and we try and correct for all that kind of stuff. We also are building our uncertainty estimation models, and are employing some machine learning and other statistical methods for automated outlier detection and flagging, all to make it as non-reliant on human interaction as possible to get this data ready to go. And yeah, so I wanted to mention also we use DuckDB as part of the kind of spatial database infrastructure locally as we process this, which is a newer database technology that handles this kind of point data really, really well, and allows for easy integration with other GIS applications and formats. We've also looked at some other outlier detection algorithms, strategies, such as like using computer vision techniques, and also sequential neural networks, but nothing has worked as good as using predictive mean matching imputation to as far as like how fast it is computationally to run, and also how accurate it is. And here's a nice picture of Tampa Bay, some preliminary process Tampa Bay crowdsourced bathymetry. But even still, we're still seeing some persistent outliers, and some of like the main sources of that are outliers that are from contiguous track lines that may have like lost bottom tracking. And so we're looking at other strategies, kind of harnessing the underlying reference bathymetry to help highlight these issues where it's just one track line, one transit that is just continuously putting out bad data. Whereas these other algorithms are better at finding those kind of intermittent, noisy data outliers due to like more environmental factors. We've evaluated the quality of it. We had some great co-located multi-beam surveys that were that crowdsourced bathymetry was also collected at the same time. You know, they were running their multi-beam and their navigation echo sounder And then we were able to independently process those data sets and compare them. This one, so all you see here, this is all crowdsourced bathymetry data. It's not multi-beam, it's just crowdsourced bathymetry. And so we were able to compare that against the multi-beam and data. We're seeing a lot, like, surprising agreement. It surprised me when I first saw these results. I mean, obviously it's not as good as you know, a fully calibrated hydrographic survey by any means, but the results are promising. Here's another test case that the data you're seeing here in the Houston Ship Channel is all derived by satellite, I mean, not satellite, but by crowdsourced bathymetry. And we're seeing a mean difference of about 20 centimeters with a standard deviation at 1 sigma of about 60 centimeters. It's surprising for free data that's just been collected by, you know, people enthusiastic about sharing their track lines. Talking about it from like a nautical cartography perspective, we do see that most of this data is what we would term CATSOC-C capable, meaning that we could characterize it and fill in some of the gaps in our data holdings if it does kind of meet that supersession threshold for what we already have. But we also see the value in more remote areas. I know this is not Florida, like this is about as far away from Florida as you could even think about. This is in Western Alaska. But the value of crowdsourced bathymetry, I want to emphasize that this is the best chart that NOAA produces to help these people navigate in Toksook Bay. And what's nice about crowdsourced bathymetry is where people actually navigate. And so that gives us a sense of like, hey, maybe if we can use this data, the people that come after them will have a better sense of how to navigate safely to those areas. Here's another picture in Western Alaska where this is the best and largest scale NOAA chart compared to actual crowdsourced bathymetry track lines. And then there's areas in the Arctic that are just, we have that kind of gray hash area there. That means unsurveyed area. But we do have some crowdsourced bathymetry. And it looks like there is a NOAA hydrographic survey just to the southeast of that area. But we feel like there's so much potential to use this to help fill in some of these gaps. But it's not only these remote areas, but even like in Manhattan, well, in New York City and New York Harbor, there's areas where we have gaps in our in unsurveyed areas in our bathymetric holdings. And so to use this data it would be really valuable to them as well, and ensure that we have some areas like this in Florida. But what I think is the most important is finding chart discrepancies against our own national bathymetric source in our charts. And so this is in St. Catherine Sound, just north of Florida. Right in the middle, there's, you know, a 6 meter sounding and 5.1 meter sounding. But when you look at it with the crowdsourced bathymetry, and this is just preliminary data, you can see actually that like, oh yeah, maybe this shoal has shifted. And that 3.5 meters instead of 5 or 6 meters. And so we want to work on automated ways to visualize these chart discrepancies against our national bathymetric source to help us understand these discrepancy hotspots. And we're doing a similar thing. Here's an example in the Texas Gulf Intracoastal Waterway, where crowdsourced bathymetry provides more context to what's going on, and we can understand that there may be areas where shoals have shifted, or we might need to survey again. And here's just another picture of like, we're seeing things that we just haven't ever seen before, such as these natural channels on the east coast of the Mississippi River Delta, where the underlying blue topo bathymetry is the best bathymetry we have available. But here's crowdsourced bathymetry. These folks just provided a clear picture of some of these really, really cool natural features. So there's just so much potential. We're seeing shifted shoals. We're pairing it with satellite derived bathymetry to corroborate these kind of preliminary results from crowdsourced bathymetry. This is in the mouth of Chesapeake Bay Nautilus Shoal. We're using it with NGS's and Remote Sensing Division's SAT-Bathy tool as reference bathymetry to help calibrate satellite derived bathymetry in especially remote areas. And we're using it as reconnaissance data. But like this is in Southeast Alaska, where we sent the no-ship Fairweather up to do a survey in this area, but we gave them this information ahead of time saying, hey, watch out, there's some dangerous chart discrepancies here based on the crowdsourced bathymetry. And they were able to validate those as well. And, you know, these dangers to navigation were confirmed and validated, and it helped in their operational planning and safety. But this is my favorite slide, is like all those cool pictures and stuff like that don't really even get to the full potential of what could be. And what we need to do is we need a larger crowd. And so here's a visualization of, so the blue dots are where we have actual crowdsourced bathymetry, and this is just in some kind of backwater, like, well, it's not a backwater, this is the James River near the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. But all those magenta points are AIS data points from vessels transiting that same area. And AIS is the sample rate of AIS is way less than what we're getting from crowdsourced bathymetry, but you can see how much the screen just fills up. And so we just need a bigger crowd, and we know that with a bigger crowd we could just see amazing things happen. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation and say thank you, and hopefully you guys have any questions that I might be able to answer.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Does anybody have any questions? Cheryl Hepke, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Anthony, nice presentation. I've been skeptical of crowdsourced bathymetry, and you're convincing me otherwise. But I guess my question to you is, what are your thoughts on, I mean, I agree, like, we need more people to be participating. How could we make that happen? I mean, let's just put it this way. In Florida, how could FCMaP, for instance, or COMET or whatever, how can they make that, help to make that happen? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so COMET, with their Crowd the Bay initiative, I think are the experts that could be able to answer that question a lot better than I can. And I'm just incredibly grateful for COMET and their kind of pioneering effort with Crowd the Bay and learning how to engage with the local community to get people excited and interested in contributing. But I think it also falls on us as the hydrographic office of the nation to show the value of what they're doing, and show them, like, and say thank you and show their impact. So as we kind of create that feedback loop and say, like, hey, thank you so much, this is what's happening, that could hopefully, increase the enthusiasm and participation so that we have a larger crowd. But it's almost a chicken and egg thing, right? If we don't have an enthusiastic crowd or a small crowd, it's hard to show the value. And if you can't really show the value as well, then it's harder to get more people interested in contributing in the first place.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things is in general, like whether it's FCMaP or, NOAA's IOCM, or, your efforts is convincing people the value of seafloor data. It's a tough one, but yeah, we're trying. Nice job.
That's how too, it's like an outreach. You almost need to, we need to get the average.
Campaign of outreach. Yeah.
Like, where you go, how do you upload it? How do you download your own system? Where this situation may be.
Yeah, but it starts with
The
why.
SciPath booth.
Cheryl, just to add on to that, is this something that universities could contribute more to?
Yeah.
Marine departments, at Nova,
Universities.
Southeastern, I mean, they do shark tagging all the time.
Yeah.
Is this something that, you could add on to those types of boating activities?
Yeah, I should do my presentation
I
right
was-
now.
I was-
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I think that's a great point, university involvement. So what Steve will show is kind of starting from the kind of local and how, making sure everything is streamlined, because once you let the cat out of the bag, you can't put it back in. So you're gonna engage stakeholders, you need everything to be problem-free, seamless, nothing janky about, hooking things up. And people are in your boats messing around. And so we need to make sure everything gets streamlined. And so Christy will talk about that a little bit. But Anthony, I know I'm very mindful of time, but I have one question. So Anthony, I noticed, how do you handle data streams from the same vessel that kind of change more rapidly over time than you anticipate?
So are you talking about like different loading of a certain vessel?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a tough kind of data quality thing. And so we've gone back and forth on this a bit. The nice thing about hosting everything, all these point data sets in the database, is that we can kind of generate transit IDs that link specific points to transits, and do statistics, kind of like more like subset statistical analysis on each transit to against the reference bathymetry. And if that's the case, then to apply a certain transducer draft per transit instead of just one per vessel. But right now we're trying to like kind of split the middle and just say like, on average, this is the draft. But that's an area of, what's a university way of saying this? This is the area of current research or something.
Yeah, no, thanks. That was a great presentation, Anthony. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Amber, is there anybody online?
My internet just bursted and logged me out. Okay, I'm back. All right.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Anthony. And so next we will hear from Matthew Rondeau. And this one's a little different. It's the Fisheries and Oceans Canada Division of the Canadian Hydrographic Service that's going to present next. So we're excited to hear from you. And it looks like you've got your presenter mode. Are you able to share your screen, Matthew?
Hello guys, yes, I will try right now. Just a second. All right, can you see it? Can you see my screen? Can you confirm?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yep, so. All right. So yeah, I will try to talk to you about what we are doing at CHS, so Canadian Hydrographic Service, inside our community hydrography program, regarding the use of crowdsourced bathymetry and satellite-derived bathymetry as an efficient approach to map poorly surveyed waters. So let me start with a quick story. So Angus and Leo Greens, they are two brothers from the Inuvialuit community of Portatak. It's in the north west of Canada. And each year, when the ice broke up, they go for a journey on board this their a 16 longboat, which is one of those that you can see on this picture, and they sail up north. So from the community of Portatak, which is here, to reach the hunting camp of Brown Harbor, which is 100 kilometers up to hunt for belugas. And it's a quite exposed journey, and if all goes well, which is not always the case, it's 3 to 4 hours of boating from the community to the hunting camp. And as you can see on this slide, they have to sail without any chart, or almost any chart, because the official CHS chart for this area is quite weak, if I could say. But thanks to satellite-derived bathymetry, you can see an image here, the screen capture of Sentinel-2 for Browns Harbor. Browns Harbor, the hunting camp is in this little bay here. You can see that from the space or from the satellite, we can detect many shoals. And we can use this technique to better understand, better chart this area specifically. This is what we are trying to do and to help communities with at CHS. So the Community Hydrography Program is a 5-year program that started in 2022 and will end in 2027. And our approach is to try to support interested coastal communities to better understand, to better map their areas by leveraging 3 main techniques. So the first one is the satellite-derived bathymetry. The second one is what we call community boats or crowdsourced bathymetry. So we support communities to install data loggers on their boats. So when they go at sea, they can collect bathymetric data. And sometimes we can organize some dedicated multi-beam survey missions. So what we can achieve thanks to that approach is what you can see on the right side of this slide, which we can build what we call community map and then share and give these maps to the communities. This is important to mention that those maps are not official products. The official product is on the left side of this slide, but the community maps can be useful for the communities, even if they are not official product, because we did not follow the ISO processes that frame the way we build charts at CHS. Even though these maps can be of use for the communities. And when the map is ready, based on the data collected by satellite, by crowdsource, and by multi-beam survey, eventually, we can then we can then deliver these maps to the communities thanks to an app, because most of the guys up north, the only tool they use when they go in the land, at sea or in the land, is their smartphones. So there is an app that has been developed by our colleagues of Transport Canada that allowed the display of this kind of community map that we built for them. So we can use the data they have collected that way on their phone. So this was my first story. A second story that I want to share with you. This one is in the Hudson Bay. And this slide is interesting because you can see that most of the Hudson Bay is poorly charted, poorly surveyed area. And the reason is simple. It's because the Arctic, the Arctic of Canada is so vast that PHS cannot survey everywhere. So choices have to be made. And the focus, the strategy of CHS for the Arctic is to survey along the main shipping corridors, to secure the transit of the merchant ship vessels that go from south up to the north to bring foods, goods to the northern communities. So this is why you can see here in the Hudson Bay that we just have bathymetric data along the main shipping corridors to each of the communities. But you can understand also that most of the people in the communities, they use the territory even if it's not surveyed, uncharted, and for their day-to-day activities, when they go at sea for fishing, for hunting, or just to transit from one community to another, they will not follow the shipping lanes, right? They will go through the white space here, which is not charted. This is why our program has been built, and this is why we think that SDB, so satellite-derived bathymetry, and crowdsourced bathymetry are two interesting ways to help map poorly charted areas. So let's go for the Inukjuak story here. What we did here, we have leveraged satellite-derived bathymetry. You can see on the right bottom corner. We have leveraged as well a crowdsourced bathymetry survey. So it's we have installed a data logger like the one you can see here on the top right on a community vessel, and then this vessel went at sea and collected some bathymetric data along the way. And I will just display a quick video to better explain the approach we have used here. So I hope it will work. You should tell me if not working, but you should see this video playing. So again, is it working here?
Yes.
Great. So again, the idea here is just to restate that outside of the main shipping lines, main shipping corridors, we do not have any bathymetric data at CHS, but this area is of interest for the community of Inukjuak. So we have teamed up with the northern village of Inukjuak in order to find a way to map this this area and to create a community map, and we achieved that goal in 18 days, which is amazing. And I will explain you how we did that. So first step, day one, was to order a satellite-derived bathymetry just to have a quick view, as a reconnaissance survey to identify the main danger of navigation. Then, on the basis of this data, we have built, you see this survey line pattern, and the line pattern has been adjusted to avoid the danger to navigation that have been detected in the SDB. And this line pattern, exported as a JPEG file, has been sent to the community of Inukjuak. So on the community vessel, they have been able to show up this JPEG, this line pattern on the screen, and then they went at sea and started the survey. So they have followed this line pattern, and after four days of survey, they send to us the data collected thanks to the data logger. And we have processed this data. So we are at day 16 here. And then when I say we have processed the data, I mean we have reduced the data set for the water level, so for the tide. And we have corrected it for the draft of the vessel, as Anthony presented just before. And with this data set, so the crowdsourced bathymetric data set in hand, plus the satellite derived bathymetry data set, we have merged the two together in order to compile what we call community map, which is the one that you can see here. And this map at day 18 has been sent back to the community of Inukjuak, and I've been able to display it on their smartphone, as I presented just before. Back to the presentation. I have another quick video just to give you more information about how we build this map, because the intention of the community hydrography program is to support the communities in the data collection. So by supporting them with the installation of data loggers, so then they can collect their own data. We also have designed and code a script to allow the data processing, and this script is available in open source, so the communities can take this script and process their own data. And the last step is to the map creation. So to build a product to give value to this bathymetric data, we have contracted a company to build a plugin and for QGIS, and I will explain you how this plugin is working. So this plugin is called FCMaP. It's available in the plugins library of QGIS for free. And the way it works is you open it, and then you define the area of interest for which you want to have a community map built. Then you need to give to the plugin a vector layer, which is the shoreline for the area of interest. We need this data. And then you need to give the plugin the bathymetric data you have in hand and on which you want the plugin based the map creation. So in that case, we give the plugin the Inukjuak CSB, so the data set collected along the survey line patterns by the community after it has been processed. And we also gave the plugin the SDB, so TIFF image. We have ordered from FCMaP, which is a company that gives that service. And then you can adjust the contour smoothing. So in that case, we have chosen a hard smoothing for the map creation. And you launch the plugin. It's not too long, depending of the size of the area of interest. You have to wait a bit, but at the end of the process, what you get is this community map. So you see the shoreline that has been given to the plugin, inside which you have the land area. And then on the basis of the bathymetry given to the plugin, so CSB and SDB, we have these contours, this depth area and sounding selection that have been generated automatically. One thing which is important to mention, you can see this map is displayed in orange hue, which is intentionally done because we want this map to be very different from what we are used to when we look at official products, and because it's not an official product. So this is how we build community maps. And again, it's available for free in QGIS, so any communities can use it. So as a conclusion, well, if I may, one thing that I would like you to take away from this presentation is that I think we have shown SDB and CSB when they are pair, when they work in tandem, they can give a very powerful way to map, to chart poorly charted areas, because they help each other. First, SDB is the ideal reconnaissance survey tool. So, sorry, as I shown, thanks to SDB, we have been able to securely deploy the community board from the Inuk community to avoid shorts along its way during the survey. And in return, the CSB data, so the data collected by the community share, can be used as in situ bathymetric data to validate the satellite-derived bathymetry. And this is the result we get for this specific area, which are very nice. The differences in the overlap between the CSB and the SDB is offset of 20 centimeter. And the standard deviation, you have to time 2 if you want it at 95%, is below 2 meters. So, I mean, the fit is very good. So it gives confidence into these two data set as good bathymetric data. So we can use it for to increase the knowledge of the community in this uncharted area. That's what I have for you today. So thank you. And if you have questions, I will try to answer them.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions? Anything online, Amber?
I've got a question or a comment, as usual. Thanks for the nice presentation. What are your thoughts on how useful this could be? I'm thinking of very, very shallow waters in upper Tampa Bay here in Florida, where it's unlikely that satellite-derived bathymetry would ever work because it's just too mucky. But at the same time, it would be important for the community to perhaps have some information on the bathymetry and the changing bathymetry. So I just want, what are your thoughts on that? Can you still, do you think it's still useful to do crowdsource if you can't verify or calibrate it with satellite-derived bathymetry?
Yeah, just a quick correction. What I said is that we used crowdsourced bathymetry to correct satellite-derived bathymetry, not the opposite. But yeah, for sure, if the water is too turbid so that you can't have any good result with satellite-derived bathymetry, yeah, for sure, you can use crowdsource. But when you can use SDB, so satellite-derived bathymetry, with CSB, what's nice is that with the SDB, you can have a full coverage of the seabed, which is not the case with crowdsource because you just have data along the track line of the vessel. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you to you.
So let me switch over here. No, you're okay.
He's finding it. I have a fish joke for you. If you went to Lake Bed 2030, I'm very infamous for my knowledge. When you have a sick boat, where do you take it?
The dock.
The dock.
You're not gonna along. Take a lot of
Okay. I'm gonna have to time me, 'cause I think I'll be a little short now. So I'm the one presenting on Crowd the Bay, but this is a COMET CSB community of practice. And I've been lucky enough to be a part of this great group of people who really come together to develop and keep this project on track. So while I'm, again, presenting, it's been pretty much all of COMET that's been working with this as well. Now my slides don't want it. So this presentation really started as like an update to Crowd the Bay. and how they've built it up. But I also realized that in our afternoon session, which will be about community of practice, that this is a really good example of a community of practice at work. And so keep that in mind for the upcoming session. And just a quick overview of my presentation here. We'll just be touching on really COMET's role in CSB and Crowd the Bay, how FCMaP fits into that project as well, and more on our stakeholder involvement, gathering the input from the stakeholders, ideas and views or tools, outreach material, things that they might need to get more participation. And then also touching on any possible applications for utilizing CSB data. So Crowd the Bay is a pilot program to expand CSB efforts in and around Tampa Bay. COMET is the core of the community of practice, and really their role is what Cheryl was asking about, helping to prove the CSB concept, raising awareness about the pilot program, all while actually creating, simultaneously creating that network in Tampa Bay. So CSB, as Anthony pointed out, we're looking at routine maritime operations. So vessels that are already out on the water, just doing whatever they're doing, recreational fishing, diving, working, traveling, and then leveraging that platform of unrelated activities that to benefit the scientific data collection efforts. So where FCMaP fits in, it really does take a village. And while COMET and FCMaP have been longtime supporters of each other, the purpose of Crowd the Bay really lends itself to that COMET or FCMaP collaboration. So with CSB utilizing vessels of opportunity to collect people mapping data and making it accessible to the public, the COMET's FCMaP have the compatible goals. We have similar missions, and this really allows for a collaborative effort that will, in the end, provide our regional best practices program for CSB. So the Crowd the Bay roadmap that is based on 3 phases. Phase 1 is foundations and relationship buildings, and all of these, the different phases do kind of blend together as we get closer to them. But initially, it was really getting familiar with the loggers that we would be able to utilize, developing materials that the stakeholders or participants might need, landing pages, informational information such as, video tutorials, and then also becoming a trusted node with the IHO. And that meant that while we could give people loggers and they could collect the data, if we had it, we had to become a trusted node in order to then utilize the IHO CSB data repository in a sense. So phase 2 of that, of the roadmap then is outreach expansion and wider implementation. So still with the relationship building, but now really identifying and targeting the potential contributors or stakeholders, and holding workshops and discussing, what they want out of this in the end. So right now we're currently at the phase 3, which is the regional scale demonstration. And so at this point, I'll walk you through kind of phase 1 and phase 2 and how we've progressed through this. Member engagement was always really important, clearly. So we asked who our stakeholders would be or who our local members really be. And we wanted to identify those initial stakeholders, but we really also wanted to make sure that we had a diverse background in users and roles that could be filled. So we identified those initial stakeholders, and we held 2 separate meetings, both with different stakeholder groups. One was in September of 2023 and the other in February of 2024. So the workshop objectives were to, come in to raise awareness of the pilot program, but really get input from the local stakeholders about the value that they saw in CSB, and, you know, what their willingness to participate, data collection, any concerns that they would have about having the data loggers on their vessels. And then gather ideas and views on, you know, what types of tools they would want, what outreach materials that they would need. So basically, kind of to what Rick was saying, we need to really, the COMIT really needed to lay the groundwork of proven success. We needed to provide the framework, the SOP, basically give the stakeholders a blueprint to how we get involved and how we do this. So to do that, we really needed buy-in. We needed to show the community really what the benefit was to them, to the boating community in general. And so we needed to explain, like I said, why CSB was important and relevant to them. So we really felt that the best way was through the improvement of science, that are relevant to them through the improvement of science. So informing charts, as Anthony was talking about, that dynamic coastline monitoring, beach renourishment, and really emphasizing that the community could really have ownership and engagement in these projects, and what future information that we get from CSB mapping. So at this point, we kind of moved into that phase 2 with outreach, expansion, and implementation. So we was creating a hub site, Crowd the Bay, and there's a multitude of information. If you go to the site, they have a dive deeper into CSB, equipment checks and balances, kind of things that you'll need if you want to be a part of it. Logger installation videos. There's all different references and section, just to name a few. And so from these efforts, from phase 1 and phase 2, we were able to really implement Crowd the Bay. We currently have, there's 2 separate loggers that we've been using, and one is the Wibble. So we have one Wibble, which is the wireless, inexpensive bathymetric logger, and that's being used by Chance Maritime. And then we have 3 Orange Force Muscle Kit loggers, and those are used by Eckerd College and Pinellas County. And so those are the ones that are currently active in the field. We had past participation by USGS and the Ballyhoo Media vessels. And it isn't that they won't eventually, but we were having some issues with how USGS was actually utilizing the logger while they were collecting other data. And so just working through some of those issues, we will have them up and running soon, I'm sure. And then initially we had 2 private citizens that were testing just to kind of help us get initial data and really start working through the process, but they're not on the water as often. So that's probably not something we can utilize from those 2 specific vessels. And that brings us really to the beginning of phase 3. So the regional scale demonstration, which was where we currently are now. There are funding concerns, but even before we get to that, it's the perfect point to take a breath and really, you know, step back. Like Cheryl said, we're not pushing it out there and then having everything break down. So we're working through really streamlining our processes. And I work through every little instance of it, see where it breaks down so we can fix it before we put it out there. So there's been a huge effort right now streamlining the workflows in order to ensure that the logger installations are, you know, are in order, data collection, stakeholder engagement, and data processing, that it's all seamless for the most part and better documented. So without getting too into the weeds here, I mean, this is a very rudimentary workflow, but I wanted to touch on it. As I said, we have 2 data loggers. So they're active in the field collecting data. That data then needs to be processed and uploaded to the DCDB, where it becomes publicly accessible. And with that, so that's just an image there of the DCDB data, where it goes. And once they've done some QA, we see it publicly accessible. So COMIT then, we can download that data ourselves, and with help of Anthony Clem and Hydro, we are able to then correct for tides and upload it to the COMIT Crowd the Bay Hub website. And currently then, as a small incentive, COMET sends the title corrected data back to our participants in their preferred format. And so now as a scientific community, we have this data coming in so while the data is impressive, we're interested in how this and similar data sets can be applied to investigate changes in our coastal waterways. And COMET has been making strides to see where this data will be most useful, keeping in mind, however, this is the very beginning stages of our data collection. So COMET is fortunate to have undergraduate interns this spring as part of the Florida High Tech Corridor program. And this provides the perfect opportunity for the projects or for projects presenting use cases for CSB data. And potential applications right now include comparisons of the CSB data with charted data and investigating pre and post storm changes from the 2024 hurricanes that you'll see in the next couple slides. So during Hurricane Milton, range towers in Tampa Bay suffered some damage, as you can see here. And I believe this audience is quite familiar with the process in which the U.S. Coast Guard, Army Corps, NOAA work together to safely open waterways and identify areas of hazards. And each of these organizations' mission is clear and defined in post-storm environment. And we would argue that in looking at this figure, the role in the local boating community is also clear and defined, similar to the glaciers in Alaska, that the response, an emergency response in these areas, it can be really, really substantial in these situations. So, the boating community can have a role in identifying the regions of significant change, like this one in particular with Hurricane Milton. It's basically bifurcated Stump Beach or Stump Pass Beach and created its own waterway. It's just a new waterway. So the local boaters have a quicker response time to post-storm events. And some of these data can then directly be submitted to the IHO CSB database. And these are tracks from COMET's Crowd the Bay data portal, and we wanted to present it as it really speaks to the number of opportunities for local boaters to give the finer scale perspective on pre and post depth change coverage. After the hurricane, you can see that there's still greater than 400,000 recorded soundings. So I believe this really shows the role and use of Crowd the Bay's post-storm surveys. These boaters are often they're following the similar waterways. They know the passes and the waterways better than anyone. So they can really serve as first responders in these instances. So I'll end with this slide. While Crowd the Bay is in the beginning stages, as I said, of the data collection, I think the results really speak for themselves. This is the IHO's CSB data before, and they're on the left-hand side. Before and after, the after on the right-hand side, obviously, when COMET's Crowd the Bay program started. So from January 2023 to my last download of data, which was February of 2025, you can really see the impressive amount of data that is collected. And I say that because you really need to keep in mind that we're talking about 3 active participants. So it's a good amount of data. And so Crowd the Bay is really, it's an amazing working community of practice, and it has really become an extremely beneficial CSB pilot program. And with that, okay, questions, unless they're too technical, because I don't have my technical people here.
Very good presentation. Is there any cost associated with the data logger for the participants?
So that was kind of the funding thing, and I don't have the amounts, but the WIBL, the wireless inexpensive, is $50-$100.
I mean, right now, we're not charging the participants
Right.
for anything.
But we
Hope to offer that in the future. We will see what happens with funding streams.
So that's kind of why right now that phase 3, why we're there, but yes, right now there's not, because we're trying to get the participants, so we're trying to fund those data loggers, and the Orange Force Muscle Kit is quite a bit more expensive. But it's also, there's a little less, work that needs to be done, because Orange Force, well, once we put the logger on the vessel, it's kind of sustaining they will then upload to the DCDB. The wireless and expensive data logger, the WIBL, is the participant then, or Comet. Someone has to grab that data and get it to us so we can then process it and upload it to the DCDB. So right now, Comet is funding all of that, and they're looking to get more grants and trying to expand. Obviously, there's some question about future, but that being said, down there, I don't think, to some extent, at some point, we're hoping it's large enough that they're not funding and people just want to be a part of this, and we can maybe not fund all of the loggers down the line.
Well, based on that, just to follow up real quick, based on that, how long does it take for a participant to get a logger and get out there and actively start logging? Have you seen,
I haven't been part of the logger installation. I mean, given the staff that we have, I mean, it's usually the only real delay is in us getting the data logger on their vessel, I would say, because once it's on there, it's kind of plug and play. They can go out and start collecting data.
Yeah, I mean, it's about like, after coordinating time and place, it's about 6 hours. Saw the logger, connects to the NEMA 2000, you do the vessel offset, and then you're off. It all goes well.
And yeah, just schedules are usually the biggest problem, just trying to get someone out to do it, and at a time when the vessel operator is, able to be there, so that it's a relatively quick process if everything goes perfectly fine.
This seems like a perfect project for like an extension network, say Florida Sea Grant, that already has existing relationships in other places beyond just Tampa Bay. Are you guys thinking about in that direction?
Yes, the initial thing is crowd the bay and beyond. So when it first started, we're going to focus on our area initially to really get it working and in place, and have that, the community and everything streamlined and spot on, and then hopefully gathering from other areas. And like I said, really building up the program, having the framework, the blueprints, standard operating procedure. We have all of that then can just be used in other areas that are interested. Yeah, stop me if I'm saying something incorrect again. Cheryl's back there. I'm like, right?
I mean, if anyone has any ideas of RFPs that we can respond to, we are ready. It's all written. The budget's we have ready to submit.
So that's a great idea.
So this is less to you about, the crowd, the bay than it is to people, maybe even like Kara and others. So you were talking about first responders, having myself done a lot of work in a breach that formed in a barrier island during a major hurricane. Right after, those things form, the tidal current are extreme. And there's often just crazy shoaling happening. So it actually could be a dangerous situation for somebody to be like a fisherman or something like that, to be out there. So I just feel like that caution needs to be expressed.
No, and part of the slide, initially was maybe might be somewhat foolish to be out there, but they're going to be out there. I think we know that. So it's not advocating for them to go out in any way, shape, or form, endanger themselves. But if they're out there doing their routine maritime operations, which is being nosy after hurricanes to see what's going on when they're asked not to. But even, to Anthony's, there's no charted areas there up through where the glaciers split. Yeah. But people are going to be there, whether, they necessarily, would I do it? No, but, but I'm sure there are people that are. So I think we all agree that we're we're not expecting people to go out and endanger themselves in any shape or form. Go ahead.
Data for, so what do you call them? Wobblers?
Oh, Wibble.
Wibbles. Wibbles. They're what, about $50 a pop, roughly?
Well, I think it's like 50. Okay, yeah, Cheryl's shaking her head.
So
Yeah.
do the users, like the outsourced people, they be able to purchase their own if they want to help with funding
Yes,
Number one.
yes, down.
down the road, or, and then.
Well, I think they could right now. Brian, is he?
Yeah, the Wibbles are through a partnership with UNHCCOM, which is our kind of big sister center at UNH, and they're not really in the business of selling loggers for profit. So they're not like a assembly line of workers making them, and so it's kind of like as needed at this.
So possibly if they wanted to go through Comet, through Crowd the Bay, say we would like a logger and we could probably get them.
I could easily see that's a super, I mean, I'm thinking about our 2 other vessels. This is like a no-brainer for us, but
Build your own. I think the instructions for building a Wibble are like
Oh, are they?
publicly accessible. So if you have people who are capable of putting the components together,
yeah.
it's free. Build your own.
So is that on the is that on the website? Like in there?
It's on CCOM's website. We can get you all the information Nancy you want to get a Wibble on one of your boats.
And then with respect to that, responsibility of the boat owner.
Well, Comet, we've said that especially in the startup part of it, if you don't have someone that knows how to do it or can do it, that we can come get it. But it's an SD card, isn't it? It's an SD card that just has to be uploaded to the box. Yeah, well, we have a box folder right now because we're high tech. And so you can just, if you upload it to the box folder, then we do the processing that's required to get it to the DCD. Yeah, no, definitely get a hold of myself or
Cheryl.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because the USGS vessel, and I'm not even sure, I don't remember the name, okay. Because they were doing the multi-beam collection, so they were turning off the data logger, and it's not that it doesn't work, but the upcoming meeting that I'm going to, I'm hoping to discuss this with Brian Calder. It was just that we aren't able to process it. It doesn't, whatever we're doing in the processing doesn't like it.
Which would be an amazing opportunity if you're multi-beam at the same time.
Yeah,
I know, right?
We turn our sound off,
Turn it,
take it off because it interferes. You can
Yeah.
see it.
exactly. And that's what Chelsea, that's what she reported back. And so that's why we don't have any of the USGS data. We have it, we just can't do anything with it yet. So that's been our problem.
I'm thinking outside of particular thing. I'm thinking outside of what we're doing. There's 2 other vessels that are in the Keys also.
Yeah.
This could be an easy solution for this.
Yes. Okay, great.
We like easy.
Anyone else? Is there anybody online? Go ahead, Amber.
I do have a comment. The roadmap linked. The link is broken, but the QR code was working. So
Oh, okay.
if you give me an updated link, then I can share it.
Okay.
The Crowd Debate link and the QR code was working.
Okay. Thank you. I'll do that. Anybody else?
That's it.
Thank you, Cheryl. Sorry. Have looked at my agenda and I don't know what I'm doing. Lunch, okay, yeah. Oh, what are we doing? So, lunch, we're gonna 12:55-ish. We have, what I mentioned earlier, Nick is he has like 5 minutes. He wants to show a story map. If I cut your lunch 5 minutes short, I hope everybody will be okay. So I know it says 1, but 12:55, please. Thank you. And the ribbon cutting stuff should be done downstairs, so go and be loud and obnoxious.
Go be loud. I better get out.
On the lead.